and say, hi, everyone, welcome. It's almost the 4th of July. Can you imagine that? It's the last day of June in 2023, and very, very happy to have my neighbor and colleague, Isaac Eliaz, with us on a Lunch and Learn. And here's a little bit about Isaac. Dr. Isaac Eliaz is a leading expert in the field of integrative medicine, specializing in cancer, detoxification, immunity, and complex conditions. He's a respected physician, researcher, best-selling author, educator, and mind-body practitioner. Dr. Eliaz partners with leading research institutes, including Harvard, National Institute of Health, Columbia, and others, to co-author studies on integrative therapies for cancer, heavy metal toxicity, and others. He is the founder and medical director of the Amitabha Medical Clinic in Santa Rosa, where he's pioneered the use of therapeutic apheresis as an adjunctive blood filtration treatment for detox and chronic degenerative conditions. So welcome, Dr. Eliaz, and very cool to have you with us.
Thank you.
Take it away.
Here I am.
Here we are.
And so let's get started. Slideshow from the beginning. So today I'd like to talk about the role of galectin-3 as a survival paradox protein in the context of the survival paradox. And let me just see how this works. Okay, here we go. So a little bit about people who don't know me. I've been practicing medicine for decades, and I've also an extensive training in mind-body medicine, also a licensed acupuncturist, author of the best-selling book, The Survival Paradox. But I'm also a researcher. I publish dozens of peer-reviewed papers. I have large NIH grants right now on the topic of galectin-3, and with focus on sepsis, and the grant is with a focus on the removal of galectin-3 in the treatment of sepsis. So with this background, being a clinician, being a healer, being an acupuncturist, being a researcher, being a mind-body practitioner, I hope that the flavor will come through the presentation. So, okay, that's good. So what is a survival paradox? You know, it's the title of my book. The survival paradox is called the survival paradox because we are wired to survive. We will do anything we can to survive. It's innately built within us. And the same drive that supports our survival is the same drive that gets us sick, that harms our body over time, that causes rapid aging, that causes us to struggle, that causes suffering on multiple levels. And as such, it will drive pretty much every disease, from inflammation to fibrosis to the cytokine storm. I mean, you got the whole list here, from chronic conditions to very acute conditions like sepsis. So how does it happen? Because the survival paradox is innate to us, it starts automatically within a fraction of a second. And we have an autonomic nervous system response through the sympathetic nervous system. And basically, we get the famous fear, fight, flight response. So we either fight, which equates to struggle and inflammation, or we flight and fear, which we always either freeze, we run away, and we try to shield ourselves, which drives the process of fibrosis. So while you can see what happens when the sympathetic system goes up and down and up and down, if we are in a constant sympathetic overflow, and then let's say a big traumatic event, and we go into the symptomatic range, at some point we no longer can come to the relaxed state, right? PTSD, being under normal ongoing stress, and it's not uncommon. So we have the sympathetic system stimulating it, and then if we can take time to take a deep breath, to sit in our beautiful garden, to watch the blue sky, then slowly the parasympathetic system can take over. So we have the fight or flight, and we have the rest and recovery. And there's always a dialogue between them. And while the sympathetic system responds within a fraction of a second, Our biochemical system also responds quite quickly within minutes by triggering what we call alarming proteins, survival proteins. And the key one that I've been researching for almost 30 years and made some of the important discoveries, what happens when you block it, is called galectin-3. And galectin-3 will drive the survival response on a biochemical level, but once galectin-3 gets on, it doesn't turn off as quickly. So we get the survival response, driving inflammation, driving organ degeneration, and we get this survival response loop that slowly, slowly deteriorates our health. That's why it's pivotal to be aware of this and to address the issue of galectin-3. So what is galectin-3? The survival product protein. It's really a carbohydrate binding protein. It's a protein. It has an amino acid end and has a place where it binds different ligands through the carbohydrate receptors, through actually specifically through binding to galacturonic acid. And once it binds to a ligand, it creates a pentamer. It creates a structure, and you'll see in a moment what happens. And different ligands can be carried or brought to different areas through galectin-3. Galectin-3 is really the bus driver that brings a different ligand to the area as an attempt to deal with survival danger, as an attempt to repair injury. Unfortunately, the methods are inflammation and fibrosis to repair. And as a result, you get organ damage and cancer. And that's why when you block galectin-3, it halts and reverses so many serious conditions. And just as a disclaimer, today I'm sharing this with you as a researcher. I'm no longer the owner of Econ Eugenics. I have no financial interest in its supplements. So I'm just more sharing with you my decades of experience. So galectin-3 structure, as we talked about, that's the galectin-3 carbohydrate recognition domain binds to a ligand, and you get your pentamers. Then you get pentamers attaching to pentamers, or pentamers attaching to the cell membrane, and you get a lattice formation, a coating. So the biofilm, which becomes more aggressive, the arteriosclerotic plaque, the environment where cancer cells can hide, the environment where infectious agent and toxic material can hide. You can have an environment here that has a lot of oxygen, and you'll get a hypoxic environment here with very different behavior. And based on the behavior, the cell receptors will change. And the cell's function is really based on its interaction with the environment. Just like us, we have our skin as a boundary, the cell has its membranes. So these are some of the important ligands that attaches into galectin-3. So for example, some ligands that drive the initial tumor growth, cause CA, mucin 1, and some that activate the immune system, MEC1, MEC3, CD45. So, for example, a paper just published in PubMed that the use of PD-L1 inhibitors in non-small cell lung cancer, if galectin-3 level is high, Keytruda will not work. Why? Because galectin-3 will bind to CD45 and will shut down the immune response, will kill the macrophage. That's an example how the cancer uses galectin-3 as its own survival mechanism. We are not the only ones who want to survive. Cancer wants to survive, bacteria want to survive, our microbiome wants to survive. So the way we interact with our environment, the way we interact with ourselves affects our health. And then you got all your fibrotic hyperviscosity markers, your neuroinflammation markers, your sticky molecules. So multiple systems are affected by galectin-3. So if we look at high levels of galectin-3, we will see an effect on so many systems. Macular degeneration, retinal degeneration, uveitis, heart and blood vessel disease, lungs, liver, digestive skin. Very important is the effect on the brain, the effect on the kidney. Galectin-3 drives chronic kidney disease. and the immune system cytokine storm, driving an infection into aggressive sepsis. So in the level of our immune system, galectin-3 is really an upstream molecule, very early molecule. So galectin-3 will stimulate macrophage to excrete different inflammatory cytokines, which over time will be very damaging. Interleukin-6 is also here, by the way. I don't know. It's a slide from a few years ago, and it's from a journal, so we can't change it. And at the same time, galectin will also drive through fibroblast the fibrotic pathway, so TGF-beta. So really, if we have stress injury, it will drive macrophage, it will drive fibroblasts that will also excrete galectin-3. So it's a whole cycle. So there are so many therapies trying to deal with inflammation here, TNF-alpha, interleukin. It's too late. It's already downstream. This is very early on. And that's the power of using galectin-3 as a therapeutic agent. So stress, danger, injury will affect our body and will drive galectin-3. Oxidative stress, chronic inflammation, upregulate the production of inflammatory signaling protein, galectin-3. So a lot of the work that all of you do, damage protein, trans and oxidized fats, chemicals, xenobiotics, heavy metals, we got to detoxify these, because no matter, we can be great emotionally, psychologically, if there are this unhealthy injury-causing compounds around our cell membranes, the cells will react with a survival response. Excessive exercise, interesting, it causes oxidative stress and damage to cell membranes. So of course, diet is key here, and supplementation, nutritional deficiencies that won't allow the cell structure to work properly, impaired detoxification, and this will all affect the mitochondrial function, which is really like the end result, of so many factors. That's like liver health is the end of so many other things. Mitochondrial function, you can look at it in a similar way. And then it will promote atherosclerosis, diabetes, cancer, heart attack, strokes, progressive fibrotic organ disease of all kinds. And all of this is well published. There are over 10,000 published papers on galectin-3. So as we said, it really affects every single disease. This is why if you look just on publication of Pectosol, I think now over 80, you will see so many areas of interest, because it's a universal process that affects so many of us. So how does it happen? We get anything that triggers our survival response, trauma and injury of all kinds, physical, chemical, emotional, psychological, epigenetic, aging. Over time, our repair system doesn't become as smooth. Infections, it's a very big one. You can see a lot in COVID. People who have a history of infections, Lyme, Epstein-Barr virus, viral infections, whatever, they are the ones who will become long haulers, because the trigger is there, and stress. And then galectin-3 goes up very little, by 50%, doubles, and then everything else goes crazy. So you get an upstream stimulus of galectin-3, and then will affect inflammation, cytokine storm, immune dysfunction, abnormal cell activity, and will end up causing sepsis, fibrosis, cancer, biofilm and dysbiosis, organ failure, and autoimmune. So this is really what happened. It's important to understand, because we want to affect the issue at the beginning and not try to do it here at the bottom. So galectin-3 plays a big role in COVID, long haul especially, but also in COVID. To give a sense, studies from August 2020 already, big studies that patients come into the emergency room with SARS-CoV, regardless of the involvement of the lungs, the level of galectin-3 in the emergency department will determine who later will make it to the ICU and will die. It promotes viral infection, increases severity, fuels cytokine storm. It's a very big one that I've done a lot of research on, in general, not for COVID specifically, and promotes immune dysregulation. So When the alarm doesn't turn off, the inflammation becomes chronic and you get this immune dysregulation. With the same compound like interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, for a very short while they are good, but you really need them for minutes. Problem is that they stay for days and weeks and months. And then you get autoimmune diseases as a result. You get suppressed immunity. When galectin-3 suppresses the immunity, causes death of macrophage, causes inactivity of natural killer cells, and you get cytokine storm. And also galectin-3 helps to form biofilms and hyperviscous lattice formation. And interesting, the spike protein of the SARS-CoV is almost identical to galectin-3. Why? Because it's a survival molecule of the virus as well. So this is a similar principle, it does similar things. So again, so it's really important is this initiation of the pro-inflammatory signaling cascade. I will show you very soon research that we published on sepsis in the last few years. So the highlight of galectin-3 where the journey started is cancer. Galectin-3 is often called the guardian of the tumor microenvironment. It helps it proliferates. It's one of the first substances to prove to enhance angiogenesis and blocking it to reduce angiogenesis. This is like from the mid-late 90s, before any drugs were doing it. And as a result, it will fuel tumorigenesis of the primary tumor, proliferation, and metastasis. So this is really where the journey started, including for me, and it's still continuing, specifically on the topic of cancer. So it's promote immune evasion. If you take T cells and they excrete cytokines and you put galectin-3 in their environment, no cytokine excretion is shut down. You block the galectin-3, cytokine excretion restarts. The cancer can hijack galectin-3 and use it for its own survival, for shutting down and evading the immune system. So in cancer in general, as a master conductor of this microenvironment, it stimulates proliferation of the tumor, inhibits apoptosis, it shuts down and kills macrophage through the CD45 interaction that I mentioned to you. It stimulates migration, promote invasion, these are the metastatic processes, and stimulate angiogenesis, while inhibiting immune surveillance, including NK cell interference. So this is some of these are some of the list of the different cancers that galectin-3 is elevated in. As you can see, it's pretty much universal. And a lot of the research, the clinical work is on prostate cancer just because it's so easy to follow with PSA. But it's definitely not specific to prostate cancer, not at all. So galectin-3 plays a big role in sepsis and acute kidney injury. So this really was not appreciated initially. It was more cancer, and then towards 2007. So I made the observation on galectin-3 blocking, helping with fibrosis and inflammation in the late 90s. It took me almost 20 years to get the patents on this. But the interest in this field, realizing that it affects inflammation and fibrosis, came around 2010, at the time that the assay for galectin-3 was approved by the FDA. And so there's a lot of interest on inflammation and fibrosis, but the role of galectin-3 in acute infections came much later on. And again, I made some of these observations, and that's part of my big project of I'm developing for many years, for over a decade. Now we are finally in the safety study, NIH funded, and hopefully we'll start clinical trials in a year or so. That's my galectin-3 column, where I'm removing galectin-3 from the plasma. That's a very exciting R&D project. I'm collaborating with very big medical centers. So what we realize is that galectin-3 fuels the cytokine storm and sepsis, and the levels of galectin-3 will determine acute kidney injury and ICU death in a septic patient, independently. And it's a driver of kidney fibrosis and injury. And blocking it definitely will help acute kidney injury, which is a driver of death. 4 million cases of AKI a year. in the United States and ICU death. So these are two important studies that I published with a very well-known author, John Callum, considered #1 critical care doctor in the world, and a group of colleagues of mine from different places, including from China. Two important studies we did. First, we studied what you call SAKI, septic acute kidney injury. Maybe a word about acute kidney injury, it's not appreciated enough. When a patient with an infection, with an injury, with blood loss, the moment they get kidney injury, it changes the dynamics of the outcome. In sepsis, if the kidney injury is bad enough, you move from 90% survival to 20 to 30% survival. Almost everybody dies. And then if you need dialysis help while you are in sepsis, 80–90% will end up being on chronic dialysis for the rest of their life. So acute kidney injury is a driving force of dialysis. It supplies 100,000 new patients to dialysis every single year in the US. So in this study, we showed that when patients come to the ICU, 57 patients, without pre-existing conditions, no kidney disease, no heart disease, no cancer, their levels of galectin-3 will determine who is going to die and who is going to get acute kidney injury. And in patients that underwent CABG, coronary artery bypass grafting, for again, with no pre-existing condition, they were just found to have blocked arteries, there's no known heart failure, kidney disease, or cancer. This is even more dramatic. The level of galectin-3 determined who is going to get acute kidney injury in the ICU. And when we gave in animal models, in rat models, when we gave galectin-3 blocker modified cytospectin, our modified cytospectin, we're able to reduce the damage in a very dramatic way. And more important, we reduce the level of interleukin-6. So when you block galectin-3, interleukin-6 will go down. So this is our studies where you see the control group, almost all the animals. So this is in sepsis, almost all the animals got kidney injury. When we gave them pectosil, either 400 milligram per kilogram or 1200 milligram per kilogram, you could see a very significant decrease in acute kidney injury, and mortality changed from 63% death to only 22%.
Great.
Yeah, and it's more dramatic when you pull out the galectin-3 with apheresis. We just finished our study on pigs, and we're waiting for the analysis, and then we're going to move to safety studies and then clinical trials. So that's very, very significant. And that's an article my group and I recently published in Frontiers in Physiology about the potential roles of galectin-3 in AKI and CKD, including my daughter.
Kidney and average.
Yeah. So galectin-3 plays a big role in neuroinflammation. The Alzheimer plaque is 10 to 20% more galectin-3 than healthy brain tissue. Associated microglia activated by galectin-3,
Wow.
increasing neuroinflammation. So this is well known. And one of the things that you see with people taking modified cytospectin at full dose of 15 grams is their memory improves, the neuroinflammation improves. And it's especially beneficial if you use it together with honocure. And galectin-3 drives plaque formation and neuroinflammation. So basically, galectin-3 will disrupt the blood-brain barrier and also will activate microglia. So galectin-3 has a big role in toxin-related illnesses. Interesting, galectin-3 is elevated in people diagnosed with damp building syndrome with mycotoxins, lungs of people exposed to black mold, heart tissue in subjects with cadmium toxicity. all will have elevated galectin-3 as the injury repair attempt that causes more damage. And as such, it will drive inflammation, immune dysregulation, hypersensitivity to toxin, and will really affect the gut dysbiosis and biofilm. That's why modified cytospectin is a very useful prebiotic. And it will increase MMP9 and then causes breakdown of the gut wall, blood-brain barrier, and organ damage. So, galectin-3 mediated condition overview. You can see the organ fibrosis and failure, autoimmunity, cytokine-mediated inflammatory conditions, obesity and metabolic syndrome is very important, and cancer, cardiovascular, and detox and biofilm-mediated condition, including fungal, bacterial. So how do we block galectin-3? The simplest way is by using modified cytospectin. Quite the journey that I started in 1995. Nobody expected this to be so big. At that time, the focus was on cancer, and really, it's a whole field now of galectin-3. There's a lot of interest in it in medicine. So regular pectin, as all of you know well, it's a long, complex fiber made from polysaccharides, mainly from galacturonic acid, with side chains of neutral sugars, arabinose, xylose, and we modify it to compared to a regular one, we modify it to a small molecular weight. So regular pectin, which are also highly esterified, stay in the gut. They can bind some mycotoxin, they can lower cholesterol, but they have nothing to do with modified cytospectin. Now, important to emphasize, modified cytospectin is a generic name. So, and anybody can use the name. So it has to be a very specific molecular weight and structure, and all the published studies are done on pectosome. And then it gets easily absorbed by the GI tract. We actually showed it by putting a marker on the pectin, a fluorescence marker, and seeing it gets absorbed into the blood. And in the blood, in the system, it has its beneficial effects. So that's the structure of galacturonic acid with side chains of the hairy sides of neutral sugar, rhamnose or arabinose. And what it does, galectin-3 has blocked the cell, and then comes MCP and displaces the ligands, takes over, and then the whole galectin-3 breaks down. That's why, for example, modified cytospectin is a very good binder of heavy metals, but when you give it to patients who are toxic or to Lyme patients, you also will see a reduction of inflammation, very different than regular binder. Why? Because it down-regulates this cytokine galectin-3-driven inflammatory response. So we are revisiting the picture of the downstream of the waterfall from the top to the bottom, and now we are blocking it with MCP at the top. And as a result, these different conditions get blocked. Sometimes it's more dramatic, sometimes it's more passive, but it is essential to block galectin-3 on a daily basis. Essential. So, research benefit of MCP, very similar to the research damage of galectin-3. So, general effects for aging, provide oncological nutritional support, supports cardiovascular and kidney health, balances the immune function, supports detoxification, a lot of publication on this, and synergizes with different therapies. So one of the highlights of our work, so many years after I started this, is we just presented this in ASCO GU in San Francisco. This is our long-term study on patients with biochemical relapse of prostate cancer, meaning the cancer was removed locally, either through surgery or radiation, and the patient PSA starts rising. So it's called biochemical relapse, okay, BRCP. Okay, so you get biochemical relapse of prostate cancer without distant metastasis. They all get scanned, They all get their PSA for 6 months monthly, and the rising PSA is confirmed linearly for 3 months. Testosterone level is normal. They didn't have any hormonal suppression therapy for 3 months. And negative PET PSMA that now finally is done in the United States as well. And then they get the MCP for 6 months. If we see a slowing down of the rise of PSA, then they move to the final study. So about 80% had benefit, either stopping of the PSA rise or slowing down, and then they move to the longer term 12 months. So this, we're just submitting the final paper, and hopefully it will be published shortly. But it's the 18 months follow-up. So this is what happened after 6 months, 78% benefit, 60 patients, 59. And most of them had a decrease of stable PSA. And then after a year, almost 90% had a slowing down of the growth of cancer, of the slowing down of the rise of PSA compared to baseline. That's a long-term study. There's no side effects. And most people had a stable or improved disease. That's really very significant because it's a non-toxic treatment. And we have a lot of real-life data, both on biochemical relapse, but surprisingly on metastatic disease, which we hope to publish shortly. And we plan to start a trial specifically on patients with metastatic prostate cancer, asymptomatic, who are supposed to go on hormonal therapy. And so how to use Pictosol? For baseline benefits, somebody who is young, under 40, healthy, they can take only 6 capsules or 1 scoop a day. If you want to have enhanced benefit, joint health, detox, then you take 1 scoop or 6 capsules twice a day. And then for optimal results, if you have a greater health challenges, then you want to take a higher dose. The full dose of 7.5 grams twice a day. If your galectin-3 is over 17.8 and you have a health issue, you may have to take 20 grams a day. And there are different preparations of modified cytospectrin. So again, that's another way of demonstrating the different uses. As we move into more serious stuff, we will require the full dose. And there is a difference. You feel a difference when you do the full dose compared to even 10 grams. Definitely. So I want to take a step back and a little bit talk about the survival paradox. So really the survival paradox is really reflects the basic way that we are wired to survive and to live. So we live and we function in a reactive way, where our body responds to danger, to stress, our cells respond to challenges, and we keep moving in this way without having a chance to take a deep breath and slow down. So from a mind point of view, unless we are trained or we try to do it, we have this chain of thoughts, one touching the other. There's no break. From morning to night, then we fall asleep, we faint away, and then we wake up in the morning, we start again. So in order to try to transform the survival paradox, the first step is to slow down. The transformation is a shift from the brain to the heart. Our brain is wired to stop, to think, to analyze. Our heart is wired to flow. Every cell in the body takes in nourishment and lets go of what it doesn't want. That's the basic principle of survival. The heart functions differently. It takes everything that everyone doesn't want from the whole body through the venous system, connects with the universe, and then offers clean blood without discrimination through the aorta, right, a rigid artery. And only once the artery nourishes the body, it relaxes and nourishes itself through the coronary artery. The only organ that nourishes itself after it has done its work. because anatomically it could have nourished itself in the left atrium. The blood is cleaned right there, but it didn't. So that's part of the heart taking care of itself as part of taking care of others and in order to take care of others. So because the mind is so congested all the time, we first create this space. And as we create space, memories, insight, emotions, traumas come up. And this is a detox process, a mental detox process. So people are really interested in what comes up, right? I saw lights, I saw this, I saw the Buddha, I saw Jesus, doesn't matter what we saw. So rainbows. Oh my God, really bad memories came up. I had a great insight. This is what comes up. That's a deeper layer of our being. What we are really interested in is how we react to what comes up. Do we hold to it again? Do we react to it? Or can we be more responsive? Use it as a transformative substance like the heart does. The heart takes what is unwanted for the rest of the body and turn it into nourishment. It's equivalent of, from a Buddhist perspective, of taking suffering and turning it into love and compassion. We use a difficult event as a transformative experience. We are wired to do this in the body physiologically, but we have to get trained to do this with our heart and mind. And when we do, we connect with our infinite healing potential. Spontaneous healing. That's how miracles happen. So that's briefly about open heart medicine and transforming the survival paradox. I touched on it in the last chapter of my book, The Survival Paradox. And that's part of my second book, which was supposed to be the first book, Open Heart Medicine, which I already wrote in Hebrew, but put it aside and moved to the second book. So that's a little bit about the presentation. And I welcome questions and discussions.
Thank you. That's pretty cool. I like the way you tied the quiet practice into the whole healing response, because that's obviously so important.
Of course.
And when people are sick, they get more disturbed. And then the treatments can be more agitating.
Right.
Yeah. So friends, we're open to questions. What I'll ask Isaac is, if someone like normal, healthy, tested for galactin, what's a good number? If it's starting to be a little questionable, and then when does it become really a big deal? What's the range?
So you don't decide if to address galactin-3 based on the levels.
Okay.
And the reason is that some people have a tendency to have more pentamers, and some people have a tendency to have more monomers.
Okay.
But the device ties to the N-terminal. So if you have 5 galactins or 1 galactin, it will read it as 1. So if you have more monomers, your MMP9s are more active, they break more galactin-3, you'll have a higher number. You do check it, because if you have a higher number, you will need a higher dose because there is more to block. And if you see in your patients or in yourself that galactin-3 level correlates to your health status or the status of your patient, for example, cancer spreads more, galactin-3 goes up, spreads less, galactin-3 goes down. I have a case report I published on it years ago in oncology. Then following galactin-3 as a monitoring for a treatment is very important. But in principle, healthy levels are much lower than what you get in labs tests. And the reason is that initially it was approved for heart failure patients, and many heart failure patients have compromised kidneys. So galactin-3 goes up. There's not good excretion in the kidneys. So you will see the labs from LabCorp or from anyone, it says under 17.8 is normal. No way. 17.8 is very high, especially with automated assays. So you want the galactin-3 to be around 8 to 10 to 11. When I see galactin-3 over 13 already, it's already high for me. If it's above 13, 14, definitely. I will already give a full dose. If somebody is over 17.8, definitely 20, I will give a more than regular dose, 20 grams, so we can block more galectin-3. The goal of modified citrospectin is not to remove galectin-3, but to block the carbohydrate recognition domain, so it cannot cause the damage. And then as the inflammation gets better, galectin-3 will go down.
Have you studied people who meditate and do peaceful practice?
I mean,
People who are crazy and running around, just by.
Of course. So I mean, it's not my study, but there are studies that showed people getting an MI, heart attack, and right away in the ICU within an hour, they either get the regular care or they listen to music or they learn to meditate.
Yeah.
And you see that dramatic decrease in tissue damage, and you see about a 15% reduction in galectin-3. And even when they get together again 6 weeks later and meditate, before to after the session, you will see a 15% drop in galectin-3, definitely.
Great. Friends, open up and ask questions. This is a great opportunity.
I'm wondering if you would suggest that quote unquote healthy people take this modified citrospectin, given that we're probably all suffering from some level of adrenal damage, and you seem to be suggesting that it's connected to the stress level.
I will make a statement. Modified citrospectin is the most important supplement you can take. No supplement is important, and the reason is you can get vitamins and minerals from food or from other things. Galectin-3 will eventually damage the health of all of us. So blocking it is a universal strategy. And this is why you see, you see pharma trying to develop galectin-3 blockers for cancer, for pulmonary fibrosis, for heart failure, for chronic kidney disease, for NASH, for psoriasis. So many indications on the same mechanism, It's really unique to this. Yeah. MCP, also it's synergistic with almost every treatment. So modified citrospectin really should be a part of your daily supplement program. Absolutely.
With food, without food?
Without food,
Okay.
but not critical like we thought. Even 10, 15 minutes prior to eating is enough.
If you ground up flax and used equal amounts, would it be comparable? We don't know.
You mean comparable to
I'm saying flax has binding and fibers and whatnot.
Oh, no. Totally not. Unrelated.
Because
it's not a galectin-3 blocker.
it's not at all. Okay.
No. Definitely.
What about in a case of a colon cancer situation?
So there is work.
And also, obviously when people are getting chemo and such.
Right. So
how that all works.
Yeah. So there is work on colon cancer and galectin-3.
Yes.
One of the key papers that was in JNCI, Journal of National Cancer Institute in 2002, showed that in colon cancer animal models, when you give MCP, you prevent the metastasis to the lymph nodes by high percentage and 100% prevention of liver metastasis. We also published a paper on Pectasol, similar one. And so definitely, and it's essential with chemotherapy. So there are quite a few papers showing synergistic effect with multiple chemotherapies.
Okay, good.
Taxols and carboplatinum and adriamycin, but it also enhances radiation therapy. Why? It exposes the cancer environment to the treatment. And when the cell is covered by lattice formation, when it has an hypoxic environment, it will stimulate something called hypoxia-inducing factor. That then will go ahead and stimulate PDK and shut down the mitochondria. And when you shut down the mitochondria, radiation will not work. So yes, so it's very synergistic. So it's interesting, it prevents radiation damage and it enhances radiation treatment. And of course, the role with immunotherapy, I told you guys how, I don't know if I told you actually, but in fact, I think I mentioned PD-L1 inhibitor, Keytruda, the highest sold cancer drug does not work in an environment of high level of galectin-3. So yeah, there's a lot of interest in it, and I predict that it will play a big role in oncology, not only among integrative doctors, among conventional oncology.
There was a question about, will it help people with fatigue or chronic fatigue?
It does, but it's very individual. Depends why the fatigue
Sure.
caused by. No, it's not a stimulant. It's not like an adaptogenic, but it will allow better oxygenation. So when we started using it, it was used for cancer. But the feedback that we were getting is people's memory were getting better, people's blood pressure were improving, and people's joint pain was getting better because it's really galectin-3 drives arthritis of multiple kinds. So it's not dramatic, but yes, it allows the tissue to function in a more normal way.
Jody says, how about with long-term COVID?
Very, very important supplement.
Yes,
Very important supplement.
I would think so. Aromatase inhibitors and hormone blockers for reproductive cancers, is this a viable alternative to those?
It's not alternative because it's a different mechanism.
Yes.
Actually, we have done studies with our product Breast Defense together
Yes.
with tamoxifen, a very
Yes.
nice animal study showing synergistic effects in parallel effects to tamoxifen. And we showed in cell lines synergistic effect with aromatase inhibitors, but it's a different mechanism. So one thing that is anecdotal, but many people, is we get these people that have cancer, got treated, they were expecting to have a recurrence, and they never had it. And they've been on modified citrospectin for a decade, for 15 years. But it's interesting that our leading principal investigators in prostate cancer, which is a well-known urological oncologist, conventional, but saw the results, because he doesn't know, he's not an expert in the field, he gave modified citrospectin, our modified citrospectin, to quite a few metastatic patients. And he has now a series of about 30 patients where cancer stopped progressing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we actually, to a point where the hospital is sponsoring the study. We just have to supply them the material. There's such interest. It's very unusual. But for us to think that a supplement is going to be studied for metastatic cancer is insane, It's like, who would believe such a thing would happen?
The question was how much dosing for a long-term
Full
COVID?
dose, 15 grams a day. Definitely.
Yeah.
You got to take full dose.
Sounds good. What else does it work well with in terms of natural therapies or?
It's very synergistic with honokiol from magnolia bark.
Oh, yeah.
Honokiol has an intracellular effect. Honokiol is an amazing substance, very underused. I mean, I've done a lot of research on it.
Yeah.
And really
Is that
remarkable.
magnolia bark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's specifically, but honokiol will work intracellularly, MCP will work extracellularly, both synergistic effect in oncological realm and in anti-inflammatory, antioxidant realm.
Yeah. I mean, most aging people have issues. They have pain, they have inflammation, they have, depletions. So there's really no contraindication.
No, actually, it's surprising. In oncology, we see the synergistic effect. For example, for patient undergoing biopsy, cancer patient going a biopsy when there is suspicion of cancer,
yeah,
undergoing surgery,
yeah,
the last substance they take into their mouth when I build the program, with their last drink, is 10 grams of modified citrospectin, because you want to prevent the metastatic process and the angiogenesis. You want to reduce it post-surgery.
Yeah, sure. That's cool. And what's it made out of exactly? Is it the white? Is it
Yes.
Largely the white of the citrus?
Well, it's only the white. It's the albedo part of the citrus fruit.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Makes sense. Okay, friends, any other comments or questions? I'm sure we're going to all run out to get it. So I can order it as a practitioner, or Does ECO deal with consumers direct?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have to deal with it. That's
I
nice.
know.
Nice for me to talk about my work just as a researcher, you know.
Yeah, I appreciate that, sure. Hands-free.
Hey, thank you everybody for taking the time.
Yeah, it's fairly good, and we'll share this with lots of people.
Oh, thank you, Ed. Good
All
to
right.
see you.
I want to see you in person before
Thank
long.
you so much.
Yeah, yeah, of course, we're going to do it. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You know, Bauman Wellness is a free member community, so go to bowmanwellness.com and join, and then you'll know what we're doing. We have summer programs. We have workshops, you know, doing practice workshops in food, movement, mindfulness, relationships, service, art, and justice. Because that's the integrated wellness model I work with. And that people are not doing practice. They're looking for doctors and looking for cures. But what I'm teaching now at this point of my life is for people to do practice together. Young, old, sick, well, but to just really build a solid daily practice that's combined by being in groups. Because when we're together in groups, we focus and we align to the vibration that's set down by the group or by the leader of the group. So we're doing half-hour practice workshops this summer, and then we're continuing with lunch and learn programs throughout the summer. So we're going to be switching websites, you know, any minute now. So if you're a member, you'll get all the uptake of what we're doing. And then we have training programs in the fall about how to be wellness practitioners, what we call them integrative wellness. So
Thank you for that. And also, Dr. Eliaz, do you still take
Yeah,
patients?
yeah, I do.
You do at your clinic.
Amitabha.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much.
All right, we'll see you all
Bye.
till the next time.